Okay, hello everybody again. Here we have Bas van Abel, who works at the Media Research Laboratory, who researches the connection between
technology and society.
Technology and society, yes. And he will talk us about the owner's manifesto and an example of it, of the Fairphone project. Okay, let's welcome him.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. Well, thanks everyone for being here, especially because I think for some group it's already lunchtime. I saw in the program that it's kind of a mixed thing, like if you're in that area you have lunchtime now, and if you're here you can wait till I think somewhere 1:30. So I think it's really good for you being here even though it's lunchtime. So that's up front. I'd also like to thank OpenSUSE for being able to tell this this story here. So one of the things I'd like to start with is this. And maybe some people here know this feeling. You know, you have this feeling where the whole world is pushing on you and coming down on you, but you don't know where to start. You don't have an idea how to change that. And one of the things you can do is what this guy did. He occupied Wall Street and made this sign, obviously. But I'm a maker and I make stuff, and I'd like to believe that you can change systems through starting with the product. You can change systems through starting to open up stuff. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, how you can change systems through opening up stuff. So why is it important to open up stuff? Well, first of all, if you open up something, you understand the systems behind it. It's a way to understand not only the hardware, the matter of stuff, but also what's around it and where it's coming from. It makes stuff transparent. And if you understand stuff, it's much easier to take action, because then you have a reason to do something, and you know that it's you know what the reason is behind that, what your action will be. So, like the guy I started with, I had my own shitty moment a few months ago when my son came to me, and he had I have a 9-year-old. Well, he's 10-year-old right now, but he at that time he was 9-year-old, and I think you guys can imagine a 9-year-old when his Nintendo breaks. And the DS broke, and you all know this device. So it broke, and he came to me crying, of course. Like, Dad, my Nintendo, it's not working anymore. I saw the screen flickering, and I have a technical background, so I know a bit of technology. I know how to use, you know, screws on devices to be able to open them. So I thought, well, you know, it's probably a loose connector inside the device, and I'll open up the device, and I'll just fix it, and my son is happy, and I can read my newspaper again. But I took the device and I started screwing and screwing and screwing and screwing, and the problem is at a certain point, the metal dust came up, and at that time I knew that I screwed up the screws. And if you screw up the screws, well, you're screwed, because if you have a screw which has, and that's the funny thing with Nintendo, if you have a screw which has a tri-wing and you use like the 4-wing screw on it, there's no way to be able, if you mess it up, to be able to open up this device. So what I did, I got really angry, and well, of course I smashed the thing, like I smash, like my laptop is already, I mean the laptop is okay, but it's still, you know, in pieces, keeping together. But when stuff doesn't work for me this way, I got really angry, and so Nintendo in a way made me throw away that device. And of course, I had a crying son, and that was you know, the worst thing about the whole situation. But in a way, so you can see, Nintendo doesn't want you to be able to fix this, because it's, you know, it's probably within their business model, it's within their liability. You know, there's all kinds of reasons probably why they don't want you to fix it. But you know, I found out that they really do not want you to fix it. And now you can buy this screwdriver online. I just bought, I think, 5 of these screwdrivers because I wanted to make sure that I had one if I needed one. So there's always someone who makes this these things match. But anyway, I think you get the point. It's not only Nintendo and proprietary systems that are the problem for being, for not being able to open up our devices. There's also this thing I'd like to call electronic anorexia. We like thin, and that also goes for our devices. If you look at if you look at the laptops and electronics, how thin they get, it's great, and we love it, but there's also a downside to it. So let's take a look inside the laptop. So if you open it, if you're able to open it, then you get into this product here. And what you see here is that the battery of the MacBook, the newest MacBook is the Retina MacBook from Mac, is glued to the casing. And it's glued to the casing not, because they like to glue it to the casing, but it's glued to the casing because they want to have it thin. It's the Z factor that counts within consumer electronics. The same goes for phones. So embedded batteries are a result of a design decision which is aimed at consumers. And because we consumers like it thin, Apple thinks, well, let's make it thinner and let's glue the batteries to it because that's the only way we can make it thinner. And that has consequences. So if you look at this, this is one of the consequences from making the stuff thinner. What Apple did is they pulled back a while ago from the APAT, and the APAT is a green electronics label. They basically set up the APAT a few years ago, and what they said is, well, our standards do not really fit the standards of the APAT don't really fit the design direction we have with Apple right now. So, and I'm a designer. I have my background is also design. So for me, that's really weird. It's like saying, well, I'm going to design something, and normally you have the requirements, and you have to design something according to regarding the requirements. And what Apple says is, well, we make something, and afterwards we look at if it fits the requirements, and if it doesn't fit the requirements, then we say the requirements suck. So that's kind of turning the world upside down. And that's a mistake, I think. And luckily, Apple thought the same because they had a lot of angry people the day after they pulled out of the APAT, and they went back in again. And this is one of the rare mistakes you will see from Apple in that aspect. And I might sound a bit like I'm bashing Apple, and I'm also standing here with, I think everyone in the future media track kind of agreed on bringing their apples, because till now I've only seen apples, but it's not about Apple. The point I'd like to make, because I kind of like the device because I've tossed it around many times and it still lives. So it's kind of sustainable. But there's design decisions related to if you look at the design decisions people make for consumers or any kind of reasons, the business models around it, and how it impacts, for example, the environment, how it impacts also the ownership for people, because if you cannot own your products, how can you be able to own them? How can you feel ownership over these products? So I think that's one of the key elements. This is a quote from MakeIn: "If you can't open it, you don't own it." I don't know if you people here who know MakeIn and it's an online, it's both offline and online environment for people to who enjoy making things, and it's much more than a magazine only. It's a community of people getting together and make stuff. And what I really like about this community is that they see ownership not as property, but much more as an engagement. It's not that I own this product. They say if you can't open it, you don't own it. Not owning in the ways of it's mine, but owning in the way of, okay, I can engage in the product, so I feel this ownership. And these are the kind of people like myself who want to be able to repair their own Mac or their Nintendo. So they came up with a manifesto. The Maker's Bill of Rights. And for the fun of it, I'm putting the Apple MacBook next to the Manifesto and see how they fit. So, cases shall be easy to open. Well, I showed you that. That's kind of hard because it's all glued and there's no, you have to send back your Apple also to, or your iPhone or whatever, to be able to open it. Ease of repair shall be a design ideal, not an afterthought. Well, no. Batteries should be replaceable. Well, they're glued to the casing, so they are not replaceable for people themselves. Special tools are allowed only for darn good reasons. Well, the tri-wing illustrates that it's not the case for many of our electronic devices. And screws better than glues. Well, I had that one as well. So you can see that the Manifesto kind of holds an attitude which we also see in the internet community. It's about exchange of information. It's about open products. It's about being able to access information about what you're doing and being able to access information about the products you own or the systems you own. And in that way, I think also looking at the maker community, it's really interesting to see because what they do is they apply open source principles to real stuff. But if you apply open source principles, open source software principles to real stuff, it also raises the question, like, what is open source of real stuff? And it's not only, it's definitely not only the design I've been showing you, like how you design stuff. It's not only the CAD files you can share online and people can download it. I think it goes much further. And to answer this question, let's have a look at how some of the stuff is made. So, anyone has any idea what this is? I knew there would be someone here who would know this. So, yeah, it's a capacitor. It's an electrolytic capacitor. And do you know, because you obviously are familiar with the thing, do you also know what it's made of? Like, the minerals inside? No. So there are minerals inside, and one of the main components for electrolytic capacitor is coltan. And coltan is a mineral which is mined in Congo, eastern Congo for a big part. You know, it comes from other areas in the world, but eastern Congo is an area where coltan is being mined as well. And well, let's have a look how that works in Congo.
This is Chance. He's 16. He says that for the last 3 years he's been working in Bessie, the biggest illegal mine in Congo. He wants to take me there.
You see, this is horrible. What they are living is really horrible.
4 years ago, this place was nothing but jungle. Today, 15 to 25,000 people are working here. Different armed groups are fighting to gain control over the mine. These teenage boys stay down here for several days, digging out minerals essential for the mobile industry. Mines like these are fueling the war here. In the last 15 years, more than 4 million people have died. These minerals end up in mobile phones, like my Nokia. Does that make me responsible?
We are all responsible. And you know that all this is going into you. We must feel revolted by this situation. We are human beings.
Good afternoon, Nokia.
Well, that's through the eyes of a documentary maker, of course. You know, it's put dramatically, but it's true on the other side. So I wanted to show you that, you know, to give you some of the context. And you know, what if after this stuff comes from the mines and it's being melted into coltan, it goes to these kind of factories. And you might know some of the stories around Foxconn and the production of well, Mac products, but also Samsung, Nokia, all these big companies. They're at these kind of factories in China, and even though they are in the news of doing really, really bad, they're compared to other factories in China, they're doing a really splendid job. So you can imagine how bad it is if you go second, third, fourth, fifth tier into the production chain. The suppliers of the suppliers. It also becomes exponentially more complicated to trace all these minerals and to look at how the production line is in place. But anyway, so we get this stuff into our products, and then we get the products, and we're not allowed to open them because they, we want them thin, and they put them together, and well, you get these embedded batteries again. And if we are ready with consuming our products, and I think we, as Westerners, produce about 15 kilograms of e-waste every year. And all this stuff ends up somewhere around the world, and most of the stuff ends up somewhere in Africa or India, or as e-waste, with all the chemicals and embedded batteries and all this stuff connected to it. So who's responsible? Who's, where's the ownership of this stuff? Where's the transparency, and where's the shared value in all these products? So if you want to change this, you can put up a sign like this. But like I said, I'd like to make things, and I really believe that we can start with the stuff around us to be able to change these systems. So I'll illustrate that with a project we did at Waag Society, the media lab I work with. And we're still working on a project, and it's really cool because it's really becoming a product now with a new company around it. And the project is called Fairphone. And with Fairphone, it's really simple, because what we said, we're going to make our own phone. And that's the easy part. And why do we want to make our own phone? Well, you saw why. Because this phone will be based on human values. And the goal is to really put this phone into the market, to offer an alternative, but it's also a means to an end. By making the phone, you have to tell the story. You have to go through all the systems that a normal phone producer would go through as well. And in that way, it becomes kind of a storytelling artifact. We want to create a phone which tells a story, which shows what's wrong, and which shows also how you can do it better. And it also creates a platform where other people can join and also help create this better situation around the whole supply chain, and create this shared value of all the people involved. So in a way, it's like creating world peace, but there's no fun in creating world peace, and it's really huge fun to create a phone, and I think a lot of people are already helping us in that. So in that way, what we've done is to make it really tangible and small by taking the phone as the message, but also the means to an end and the goal itself. So how do we do that? We've started with in Congo also.
Africa.
With mining.
L'homme est plein de dignité, sa nature c'est Dieu, son histoire est l'au-delà. L'homme et son paysage aimé, tout est là devant ses yeux, tout est dans les baobabs. La renaissance africaine, la renaissance africaine.
Fairphone is the world's first collective non-profit technology company developing a phone using minerals mined and sold under equity conditions. Recently, Fairphone undertook a fact-finding mission to Katanga, the most southern province of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Katanga's soil is full of copper and cobalt, the latter being used in batteries for mobile phones. the Fairphone crew visited various parties in the mining industry, from high-ranking officials to artisanal miners. This short film shows you some highlights of a very successful though bumpy expedition towards the heartland of Congo's copper belt.
Okay, so but it's not only the mining we're talking about, of course, because it's the whole production chain. You also have to think about the design of a phone. And I just found out yesterday, actually, that Thijs was involved in making this design 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, something like that. So what we did, we also placed calls online through websites for people to help us come up with ideas on creating a Fairphone. Of course, you cannot put all these designs in the phone already. We're not going to produce, a design which is more like a futuristic thinking, but it helps us also to find also what is important to people and where they want to go to. So involve people in the design. Look at new technologies like 3D printing and open source. We're talking with Firefox OS to implement it into the first phone with Mozilla. To find out if we can get more radical transparency into the phone as well, but still keep it as a good consumer product. And we also have to look at how we design in such a way that we encourage this new engagement, this new ownership, instead of putting it as a closed system. But also, what is the lifespan of a phone? How can we encourage longer people to use their phones longer? Because 18 months, it's really nothing. And I'll show you, the question is, do we really need a new phone? And I'll show you a short film, and then I'll...
It is kind of funny how people react when the new iPhone comes out. Some people actually get mad. Why would they make another product? I desperately want to buy those bastards. It's almost as if the new iPhone somehow ruins the old iPhone, but it doesn't. It's all in your head. In fact, we set a camera out on the street today, and we told people outside to check out the new iPhone 5, which is unavailable so far. So in reality, what they were looking at is the current iPhone 4S that everyone has. And, well, here's how that experiment played out.
The new iPhone 5 just came out today. We want to know if you'll take a look at it. Tell us how it compares to the last iPhone.
I'd love to. Oh, it's way better. Yeah, it's nice. That's definitely noticeably better. It's a little thinner. Looks like the screen's a little bigger.
Seems a little bit faster.
Yeah.
Well, you get the point. So, I think one of the important things here is also that we need to know that as a consumer, consuming is a political act. But to be able to make it a political act, you also need to know the stories behind the product. And that's what we try to do with this phone, to tell that story, to also get consumers involved in that, and to show them that their decision is also one of the things that determines how the supply chain will be able to change. So it is not only about the story, you also need a great product. And that's one of the hard challenges. I come from a more idealistic background, but then, at a certain point, now we're really going to make a phone, and people have to buy that phone to be able to keep this thing sustainable. So in our first phone, we take the first steps, because we cannot make it fair, 100% fair. I don't really believe 100% because it's not an absolute thing, but we take it step by step. Conflict-free tin, we already put that in the first phone. We have a self-assessment system in place where people in the factories can self-assess their working conditions. And we're getting back electronic e-waste through a system with an NGO who's taking back the e-waste from Ghana. And then you need a price. It will be around £220. So it will be, the price will be okay compared to all the other smartphones. And then the phone has to be beautiful, of course. So that's where we're at now. We're really designing this phone. We have some of the investments ready, and it's kind of weird because we started as a campaign, but now we're really, going into production. So I think next year, June, we will produce around 10,000 of these phones. So if people are interested, go to the website. You can already pre-register. Just to wrap up, let's take a step back. I mean, I showed you Fairphone, and I think Fairphone is about creating meaningful relations. It's about consumers, it's about the makers involved in this whole system. And I think that's also like what we do with open source. You create a shared value around all the people involved. It's not, you know, the consumer and you have the maker. No, it's like this whole community of people working on one product. And to me, it's also a way to reverse what Marx already predicted, that you got this alienating effect when you make stuff more and more complicated. And of course, things have become so complicated that we cannot grasp it anymore. But if we create communities around it, we can at least feel part of that complicated system and feel attached to all these dots in the whole system. So why is it important to open up stuff? Well, because you can understand the systems behind it. And if you understand the systems behind it, you can engage and take action. I think that's really important to be able to solve all these big issues we're dealing with at the moment. So thank you. Do we have time for questions? Or?
We don't have time for questions, but you will still be here for the roundtable. So after that, if anybody wants to ask something, after that.
All right.
Okay.
Do I need to keep this on then? For the roundtable? I don't know. It was